For decades, families have been told that love, support, and staying connected to a child struggling with substance use is enabling, and that tough love is the only way to help. We don't hear enough about the families who are going against that narrative and choosing other paths to family recovery. This is the second episode in an ongoing series meant to elevate the voices of families recovering through relationship. Today's guest, Paula, said something to me in our prep call that really stuck with me. She described how, as she started searching for science based, compassionate approaches to her son's substance use, her social media algorithm began to shift. It started feeding her training programs, books, and other people who didn't believe in tough love. I think that's more than a story about Instagram or Facebook because our brains work the same way. Whatever we believe is what we're going to get confirmation of. If we believe in stigma and that addiction is a moral issue, we're going to find more stigma and judgment everywhere we look. But if we shift toward something more compassionate and rooted in science, that's exactly what gets delivered back to us instead. So when we do that, we start seeing the reasons behind the behavior instead of just the behavior itself, and we start to have more compassion and less judgment. Before we get to her story, I want to share a little bit about our guest today, Paula Brown-Stumpf. Paula is a mother who spent 8 years navigating estrangement from her son. During that silence, rather than just catastrophizing while waiting, she started working on herself, found a therapist, started her own smart recovery family and friends group, and eventually trained in the invitation to change and craft. Today, Paula and her son have fully repaired their relationship. Paula now facilitates support groups and uses everything that she learned to help other parents who are walking the same road. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience with us today, Paula.
Well, thank you so much, Heather, for having me.
So let's go back to the very beginning when you first realized that your son was using substances. What did you believe? What was your belief system at that time about substance use? And like, where did that belief system come from?
Well, when I first discovered that he was using substances, it was pot, and he was 13. And so at that time, the if I had any skills whatsoever, it was just things that the culture around us and around me sort of brought me up in, right? Which was tough love. But at the age of 13, how do you do that? And the first emotion that hit me when I found out was anger and frustration. But I was so mad at him, especially he was smoking in his bedroom and I was in the living room. I mean, really, come on, dude. And so I didn't know what to do. I plowed through the door because I could smell it and I caught him and, I yelled at him and he just kind of shrugged and I don't think he knew what to do with my reaction. Um, but this whole, I really felt helpless. Like, what do I do? I even called my estranged husband, his dad, and asked him for help, asked him to talk to him. And he's like, I don't know what you want me to do. And he pretty much just blew me off. So I didn't really handle it very well. When he was at school the next day, I searched his room, which I don't recommend, found the pot, found all of his paraphernalia, and got rid of it. And in that time in my life, not having any skills whatsoever, I was also preoccupied with recovering from a horrible divorce situation, which is a podcast all on its own someday. So I was trying to recover from that, and I was working two jobs, right, to make ends meet. So I wasn't really around enough. In hindsight, I didn't really address it after that. I just, told him all, you can't smoke pot. What are you doing? Don't do that. And then at the age of 17, different home, he did the same thing. Smoking in his bedroom. I'm in the living room. I could smell it. I went in there, but this time I didn't yell at him. I was just like, "Oh my God, you're smoking in here again. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're not very good at this. trying to hide this when I'm in the house. And I proceeded to force him to take a drug test because I decided I would keep a couple of drug tests in the home. And so I made him drink the water. I made him, he's like, I can't pee. I don't care. I'm going to sit with you until you can. And because he was totally denying it. And the room was full of smoke. So again, I went through that process, mailed the stuff in to the lab, came back positive for pot, but I still didn't know what to do. I knew in my heart that I couldn't like be whatever this tough love was. It just didn't feel right. But I didn't know what to do. So again, I grounded him for a couple of weeks and I let it go. I thought back on my experiences in high school, and I smoked pot when I was in high school. I also outgrew it. So that's where I justified he's just going to outgrow it. It's just a phase. In hindsight now, he used all kinds of different things throughout high school and beyond. So at that point, again, I just felt helpless and I just felt like I don't know what to do. I don't know this tough love thing. I don't know how any of this works. So as far as my parenting goes, I just did the best I could, I guess, with what I had at the time.
Yeah. I I can identify with everything that you just said. It's that anger, that helplessness, that, not having anybody to turn to for support. I mean, the whole drug test scenario was exactly the same, the checking the bedroom, all the things. And, but I just kept repeating the same things because I didn't know what else to do. And it just kept making everything worse. So I think so many parents find themselves in that cycle of just doing the same things over and over again, hoping that something will change. So I know you said that the tough love really didn't feel right to you and that and you didn't know what to do, but I'm wondering how your beliefs at the time impacted your parenting, and did that make things harder for you?
It did make things harder in the fact of realizing that I can't control my 17-year-old. I can't even control my 13-year-old. And that's hard because again, I feel helpless. Like I could control them when he was a toddler, when he was 5 or even 7. So my parenting again, I felt helpless, you know, hopeless as far as I just don't know what to do. Now in hindsight, when he was 17 and I caught him, he did tell me that he was addicted to pot. And my belief system at that time was, no, you're not. Pot's not addictive. You're lying to me. You're not, you could just quit. You need to stop this. You're getting ready to go to college and you play football and all this stuff and you just need to knock it off. Right. Now I know, right. That it is addictive. Um, but I don't really have a solid answer for my parenting. And again, I was working 2 jobs. So I was exhausted. Um, not ready to maybe deal with the hard stuff. He had a big party at the hall while I was gone for one night, 17. I figure I could leave for one night. And I found out from the neighbors that in the following days that there was a massive party here at our home. And the way I addressed that was I gave him a chance. I said, I know about the party. Here's your chance to talk to me. Here's your chance to tell me what happened. And he just put his head down. He wouldn't talk to me. So I say, here's your chance. There was like this buildup, and then I exploded all over him. Right. And I'm like, you had your chance. And he was just and he's never called me ma'am, but all he could say was ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And his head was down. Right. He was ashamed. And I was just feeding that shame, not realizing what I was doing. And I made him go around to the neighbors and apologize. And I said, I'm gonna stand in the street and make sure you do it. So this was maybe one thing to kind of draw a picture on how I handled things, not really knowing what to do and letting my anger get the best of me and saying things that I regret.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is just how hard it was and how overwhelmed you were. Are a single mom working two jobs, doing the best you could. And, you know, there's this idea that we should be able to control our kids. I don't know where it comes from because the only reason we can control them at any point is because they just have chosen to comply with us. It's this false illusion that we're actually controlling them because we're not.
No, absolutely not. But it always comes back on the parents, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it does. That has really changed how I look at that, going through that. It's very humbling to realize that you have no control. And I like what you said about the shame too, because the the shame doesn't always look the same. Like your son, the what you described to me would be a little more easier to identify as shame, but sometime like with my daughter, it came out as anger and defiance.
Hmm.
And so it was so much harder to identify, but I think that's such an important thing to think about is that it, it might not always be easy to identify what they're going through. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But once we start thinking about what they might possibly be experiencing, it does help to give us some answers about where to go next. Um, but one of the things that you talked about when we met to talk about this episode was there was a time that you had a phone call with your son, and he was calling to tell you that he had used again and maybe was going to ask for help or something, but you felt like you had to be confrontational.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that phone call was very difficult. Just to give it a little bit of background, he was engaged to a woman um who we all adore. And during their relationship, it was almost kind of simultaneously or very close in that started having an affair and he started using meth. And so this is a first for meth. He's got history with pot and opiates, no alcohol, but this was now his first experience with meth. And she she kind of forced him. My son, you can kind of easily force him to maybe do some things. Um, it may be going back to me being an extra strong parent because I didn't have someone next to me to support me, so I was kind of strict and maybe bullying at times. So she kind of bullied him into, you're going to call your mom and you're going to tell her that you're using again. That's what you're going to do. And so she told me to expect a call, and my son called and he started sharing things with me about his fiance that were totally untrue. And I listened for a little bit and then I just couldn't listen to it anymore. And I could feel the anger rising in my belly and it just came out of my mouth and I just yelled at him, "Stop with your lies. I've had enough. I've had enough of your lies. You've been lying your whole life. You're lying to me about this now. I know what the truth is. Stop it." And then I started bringing up historical lies that he told me. And eventually, by the time he hung up on me, I was in tears. And he hung up on me, sent me a text message. "I'm never speaking to you again." And from that day forward, he blocked me. And I actually didn't have any contact with him for about 3.5 years later. I would, I, d- I couldn't get through his phone number. So I started utilizing Messenger on Facebook and I would just message him, "I'm sorry. I love you. Let's talk." And then as time went on, it shifted, "I'm here for you." But during this time, I started to hang out with people that had a changing perspective in that the yelling, the shaming doesn't necessarily work. It does for some, but and so I started to shift my language a little bit, and it felt better than being angry. But I still didn't understand his drug use or what was going on with him. Um, so I just started sending him and then one day he opened up his messenger and there was just dozens and dozens of messages from me. And so oh my God, I didn't know these were sitting here. This is 3.5 years later, so he's not angry with me anymore. We talked off and on that day via messenger, and then that was it. And then there was this disappearing um, that I had to deal with, that I didn't really understand. So I kept sending him messages, but none of them were being opened. And finally, I sent him a message and I said, please, you don't have to read them, but open them for me so that I know that you're okay. And so he did that. Right. And so during this time is when I started to dive deeper into learning more about how I could help the situation. The first year, I did ruminate, I did catastrophize. All the worst case scenarios went through my head constantly. I was depressed because of the way the phone call ended, and I wasn't able to resolve anything with him. I just went through the motions of going to work and coming home, and I just realized one day that I can't keep existing like this. All the worry and not knowing where he is he in the morgue? Is he laying in a ditch somewhere? Does he even have ID on him? What if they find him and he has no ID? I mean, all the things. And I had a moment of clarity. I don't know what it was, but I realized that I was obsessing on him and I needed to take my focus off of him because there was absolutely nothing that I could do and accept that and then help myself. I needed to learn skills on how to cope through this, how to handle it. I don't, for the lack of a better word, handle it. Um, 12 steps. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something kinder, and the people I was hanging out with on Facebook, the support groups I found myself in, were supportive and all sharing ideas about that. Um, but that was heartbreaking, really. Um, and and then the helplessness and the hopelessness of not knowing where he is. But I mean, he was in Arizona, I was in Southern California. Like Arizona is a big state. I can't drive up and down the state and look for him. And I was sending these messages, but finally he started opening those messages. Um, so that was the beginning, I think, of me learning skills, going to craft training. Prior to that, I became a smart recovery family and friends facilitator for me. I learned the material and I wanted to disperse the material, but it was still all about me, right? This is going to help me. And working with these other people, we're going to learn together and it's going to help me. And then things came down my pipeline on social media. Now, COVID is here, not working, nothing else to do with my time. And so I would see these things, these training courses, craft and invitation to change, and sign up for them. And I really liked what I was learning. So then I sought more and I sought more, all to help myself. And that would include my therapist as well.
Yeah, that idea that we have to confront, I think, is one of the most damaging things that we're taught. That because I can remember feeling that way too. Like if I don't confront her, then I'm complicit, right? I'm letting her get away with it. And she's going like, I don't know how she could ever possibly have thought I was okay with any of it, but that was my line of thinking at the time. If I don't confront her, she's going to think I'm okay with it and she's going to be getting away with it. And it's just going to make things worse. And I'll never forget, like, the first time I heard this from a coach, she said, if you don't have contact with somebody, you have no influence over them. If you don't have a relationship with them, you have no influence. And it was like this light bulb went off in my head, and it gave me permission to focus on my relationship because I wanted influence. And I think what you shared about sending those messages, now you're having to really make the most out of every bit of contact you have with your son. And there's so many people who think that they're like, I don't know if I should, if craft is going to work for me because my son or daughter doesn't live with me, or I don't have contact with them all of the time. What do you say about that?
Well, and I'm glad you asked because culture has taught us to detach, right? So some parents, because for the lack of tools and because culture and society, this is what they say, have okay, the world tells me to detach, so I'm going to detach and I'm going to push my child away or my loved one away. I couldn't do that. My heart wouldn't let me do that. He detached from me, right? And so I'm like, I've got parents, I'm aware of parents that have their child with them and the chaos and the struggle that's in the home all the time with their use. And then there's me where he's totally absent, right? And I don't know what hurts worse, right? Being in the middle of the chaos or not having a relationship with my child. And we were very close. Um so that whole dynamic required so much acceptance. But what I did is in my learning how to cope and learning communication skills, which is really the bottom line of the work, is how to connect and stay connected or how to reconnect with your loved one. I'm going to put this stuff in my back pocket. I'm going to tuck it back there. Oh, there's some good stuff. I'm going to tuck it back there. And I'm going to keep learning and I'm going to keep talking about it and eventually being trained to facilitate the groups, all while I'm learning from the other parents, still learning from the material to this day and tucking it for when he comes back. I never said if. I had to have some sort of hope. So I didn't even, I'm like, when he comes back, I'm going to be ready, right? I'm going to have the skills I need to repair our relationship. Um, and there are parents out there like, why do I have to do all the work? You know, um, and that's a very good question. They're the one with the problem. But what I discovered is that there's this whole dynamic in a relationship. And part of that is having some sort of loving, accepting connection to influence them, even to begin to have an influence on them. Now, my son had zero influence on him whatsoever. So he experienced all of the natural consequences on his own. I don't know if I had influence, if it would have changed anything or not. I will never know that. But what I do know is that he experienced all of the negative consequences all the way up until prison. And that was his final consequence. He's 40. He got out of prison a year ago. Um, but that whole, I have hope. I'm not going to give up hope. And in the meantime, I'm sending him messages. I'm not giving up on you. I will wait for you. Just simple little tiny flecks of love and acceptance. Um, we want you in our lives, drugs or no drugs. But that was during those years was extremely difficult. The learning of the skills really preoccupied me in a healthy way without becoming obsessed with it. And it gave me so much hope. Um, and so when I finally had the opportunity to use my skills, I did. And
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that even though you didn't have that much contact, you were making the most of every opportunity and thinking about I love that, not if we get back together, but when, and maintaining that hope and being prepared. You know, you had the space to prepare and you took advantage of that. And so you were ready when was coming back into your life, and probably the higher quality interactions helped create that, bringing him back into your life. And I think, but I also want to honor how, because you mentioned how hard that is to be doing that. Like I can remember one of the groups that I was in, they recommended that you find, like, have some treatment centers ready and being prepared. And at the time, my daughter was like 1,000% no, I'm never going to treatment. And I was like, I remember it like physically hurt to be doing the research because I was like tormenting myself while I was doing it. I'm like, she's never going to do this. Why am I doing it? And so it's that kind of similar feeling of this is your brain constantly working against you, telling you this isn't working. But it was literally like a month later was the first time she brought up going to treatment. So even though it's hard being prepared, you'll never regret being prepared.
No, never. And it's a marathon.
Yeah.
So if we had a quick fix, we wouldn't be sitting here today,
Yeah.
right? So the growth, my own growth and evolution of myself was painful. I had to face a lot of things about me as a person and a parent and a partner in a relationship. I mean, I went very broad with this work and I applied it, and to this day, to my own personal life. Is it perfect? Never. Am I human? Always. And some of it goes right out the window. But one important thing I wanted to mention is that somewhere along the line, when we started to repair our relationship, my son realized, as he told me little things, that I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't having that knee jerk reaction that I would normally have, and probably most parents have, right? I just sat back and took it in and listened. And some of it's heartbreaking, right? To the mama heart. But that not freaking out and actually learning not to freak out, right? I wasn't suppressing anything. I was just learning not to. And if I did have feelings of anger or other emotions, I would finish the conversation with him and then I would go cry or go for a long walk or whatever to process what I was feeling. Um,
Yeah. And that's a skill that can be built like a muscle,
mhm.
right? Like it takes a lot of work. I can remember when Helena's first started opening up to me and was sharing those things with me too. And I did the same thing. Like would I got good at just not reacting at all, learning to listen without like trying to come up with how I'm going to convince her of my way. And then taking my emotions and processing them on my own instead of real time in front of her reacting all of the time. And that was like, because I felt like I was reacting against my will for a long time. Like I wanted to change and be different so bad, and I just couldn't until I got the skills and worked on myself and understood myself. Like that to me, you said you went deep with this work, and so did I. Like that's the beauty of it, is it really gave me a sense of control in my life and understanding of myself that I had never had before.
Absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah.
And now he has a space where he can come and tell me anything he wants, and he knows I'm not going to freak out. And that includes if he has a lapse. I'm not going to freak out. It took a lot of work, and I don't know when and where it happened, or if it was a conscious decision or not. But I don't. Now some things make me sad, so I'll go cry. But I just don't anymore. It's just years and years of practice it and using it in my everyday life, right? I have these skills, I can still use them, all of my relationships are better. Not that they were ever bad, but things function better. Um, so there's that influence, and what my son, we have supported him in his recovery fully as partners and collaborators. And I think that's very important for success, at least in my own experience with him.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit because I love that, so we hear that we should allow natural consequences, and it's given kind of in black and white that you just allow them. But we shouldn't do things like pay bail or a lawyer, send money. Like that's just always no. We can't let them live with you, none of that stuff. But you did some of those things, and you did them not because you didn't feel you had a choice, but you made intentional choices there. So I'd love for you to explain that, because I think understanding that gives families the freedom to decide for themselves on their each unique situation.
Right. Every situation is completely unique. And just to step back just for a second, learning about natural consequences through the work of craft and invitation and change. Standalone natural consequences rarely work. There are natural consequences that we should allow, and not the ones that are not life threatening, right? But it also layers with positive reinforcement of the behaviors that we see that we want repeated. So this sort of notion that allowing all the natural consequences, this very black and white as you described, rarely is effective. So uh he had a revolving door with getting arrested, going to jail, catch and release, and it's usually possession, paraphernalia, doesn't show up for the court date, then there a warrant, he gets picked up, and it's just this continuous revolving door. And I knew that because when he wasn't opening my messages, I would check the superior court in the area that he was at. And I would always say, oh, okay, he was in jail for a couple of days. And he never called me, never asked me for anything. Throughout any of this, by the way, he never asked me for anything, ever. So I get a phone call one day, it's from jail, I accept it, and he's frantic, and I could tell that he's coming off of meth or still on meth. He was just, oh my God, you got to get me out of here. Mom, 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 mom. And he was just making no sense. And my work truck, it's still out there and I got to pay my rent. I didn't know he was working or living anywhere because we had no contact. But he was just absolutely freaking out. You got to get me out. You got to get me out. And I'm like, okay, Paula, you're starting to use these skills. Okay. All right. So listen, and I listened for a bit, but then I had to interrupt him. I tried to let him vent as much as he wanted without going on and on and on. I interrupted him. I said, honey, please stop. Just stop for a minute and listen to me. Can you do that for me? I need you to stop. So he stopped and I said, I want you to listen. And I was very, very like I am right now. I want you to listen to what I'm going to say. I really need you to hear me. I love you very much, but I'm not going to bail you out. And here's why. And I told him why. I said, this revolving door that you've been having, missing your court dates. Your court date is on Monday. Today's Wednesday. You need to stay there so you can finally face the judge and finally start dealing with all the things that have been piling up. I also told him that I believed in him. I believe in you. You can do this. You've got what it takes. You can wait. Every day he called me, sometimes more than once, begging. And I just stuck to my conviction. It's not going to happen, and here is why. I love you very much. But as each day went by, he started to get more like himself. He started to, and then I think one of the last phone calls we had, he was asking about family, and we were just having a normal conversation. Monday came. He called me. The court date was canceled. So I need you to bail me out. And so still, I'm like, I don't believe what he says, right? All the years of the lies and stuff. So whenever throughout that week he would tell me something, I would say, okay, I'm going to hang up, call me back in an hour. And I would call around and confirm what he said or if it's true or not. So I did call the courthouse and I called the jail. They said, yes, it was canceled. It was COVID. And the jail was in lockdown now because of a COVID outbreak. And so he called back. I had confirmed everything. Oh, and I also asked the courthouse, when's the next date? And she said, we don't have one yet, probably 6 to 8 weeks. And so that's when I stepped back and paused. Okay, he's in jail right now. He was arrested for forgery. Does the initial consequence fit the crime? Right? And I decided that 6 or 8 weeks longer was too long for something he didn't hurt anybody. I mean, he had some restitution he had to pay, and there was a victim, that he wrote the checks. It was forging checks, but it wasn't anything violent. And so I called him back and I said, I will bail you out. There's no date, maybe 6, maybe 8 weeks. I feel like it's too long. And I did. I bailed him out. He couldn't thank me enough. A couple of days later, he was released. I don't know why they do this in the middle of the night. And while he's walking in the street alone in the middle of the night, he sends me this beautiful message how no one's ever helped him like this before, and how grateful he is, and how much he loves and appreciates me. And I couldn't be more grateful, and that's what it's about for me. He went on and continued his behaviors. In the meantime, I'm changing. He's not, or to the best of my ability of knowledge, he's not changing. I'm changing, and I'm going to continue to do this work. Um, so I bailed him out. I did make it very clear to him, one and done. We're doing it this one time. We have an agreement. I bail you out. You show up for all your court hearings. And he did. And there were so many, and I don't know why there are so many court hearings with things like this. But a year into it, the last court hearing, he didn't show up. But when I decided to put out the money, and it didn't break the bank, and I am blessed to have it, I had to have a conversation with myself, right? And so what I did, anything that I did, giving money for bail, I've got to let it go. No expectations. And I'm letting it go to the universe, like a leaf or the wind. Off it goes, and that's it. I disconnected from all of it. So although I did say, here's my end, this is what you're going to do on your end, and I expect you to do this, I really didn't. I would be so surprised if I got any of that money back. A couple years after that, I get a letter saying I get the money back. That the bail bondsman had a lawyer. They fought on my son's defense. It was extenuating circumstances that he couldn't be there. I got the money back. On that note, I instantly wrote to my son and congratulated him for going to all of those court hearings. You did it. You didn't make it to the last one, extenuating circumstances, but I could see your effort. You did it. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah. I like that one, the way you described deciding to leave him in jail was not about punishment. Like you had a reason for it that was logical, made sense to you. You liked your reason for that. And then you gave yourself permission to change your mind. Now it's not logical anymore. Now I've got a new logic for why I want to pay bail. And I think the beauty in all of that is that we all need that permission. I think that we're told these black and white, do these things and don't do these things is not realistic. It's not taking into account that these are human beings and that each person in each situation is very different.
Right.
And I also love the way you shared that you knew what you were getting into when you paid bail. You knew that there was not just a possibility, but maybe even a likelihood that he might not make one of the hearings. And you went into it being realistic with what the possibility was. And I think there's just so much to learn from that. And I just want to point one other thing out that you started out saying about natural consequences that they're not meant to happen alone, which is a lot of what we hear is the emphasis on natural consequences and punishment, right? But punishment is not a part of craft. In that you mentioned there's always an offset to the natural consequences. There's focus on positive reinforcement, collaboration, connection, communication. It's one small part of a lot of tools in an approach. So do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, it really is. It's all of these skills and approaches, chapter by chapter or layer by layer. That's what they do. They work together, they layer upon each other. That black and white thinking doesn't work. And so what we some people say that, oh, we need to like spend more time in the gray area. I don't call it the gray area because it's too dark for me. I call it the kaleidoscope between black and white, all different colors and shapes and sizes. And this is where we learn and we grow and we backstep and we step forward and we live this kaleidoscope of all of these layers of colors and shapes that layer upon each other. It was a hard lesson for me to learn about the black and white thinking, but in the kaleidoscope, that's where we really live, right? There is no one thing for anything, you know, in life. And then getting back to, I got him a lawyer. He, as I mentioned earlier, he went to prison. Um, this last time when he was brought in, I saw on the website, there are all kinds of scary charges, felonies, misdemeanors. None of them were drug possession. They were crimes that were driven by his drug use. These are things that my child would never do if he wasn't using meth. He would never do these things. So again, I had to go back into that sort of analysis. Are you going to let the public defender do this? Doing what I can live with and what my husband can live with, who is not my son's father, but he is a partner in all of this as well. And we decided to get him a really good defense lawyer because prison, he's going to go to prison. And so for how long? Right. And that's punishment. And I felt like punishment, going to prison was punishment among itself. So can we shorten it? He didn't rape anybody. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't get a fight with someone and break bones. He only hurt himself by his actions. So I felt really strongly about how can he's still going to quote unquote pay the price. He broke laws, right? But does the punishment fit the crimes? And so I then had to analyze that. And again, I'm going to put it out there into the universe and I got to let go of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it does matter. Like some people, a public defender is the only option, right? And that's going to impact the decision making. But we just want parents to understand that if they have the financial means and they feel like it's the right thing for them, that's okay to make this decision, that they don't have to follow that one size fits all advice. So the last question I have actually has two parts. One, how's your relationship with your son today? And two, any just last advice for parents who are struggling through estrangement with a child right now?
Mm, that's a tough question. The first question I'll address, my son and I have a beautiful relationship today. He calls me all the time. We talk. When he has an issue, it's popped up in life or whatever, he wants to talk it out with me and maybe hear my ideas. Um, we also paid for sober living when he came out of prison, and we paid for that for 13 months till he was able to get his own place. All of that support and collaboration, he was in the driver's seat. We made sure that he knew we were going to be with him and support him and see to it that these goals happened for him, because we felt like if we didn't, he is a strong possibility he would fail. So the gratitude that he has and the love that he feels from us throughout all of his youth, he didn't realize that. So the reason why he stayed away from me and us is because of shame. He was protecting me from him. He didn't want me to see him like that. He didn't want me to experience him like that. Right. And I didn't take it personally. I just couldn't. I just knew that there was something that was preventing, in hindsight, and him telling me and through our conversations. It was shame. He was on that shame drug use cycle. That's why he never asked for anything, because he didn't deserve it in his mind. So our relationship is better than ever. I'm grateful for him. He's grateful for me. Um, it's I can't say enough about how happy we are um, with the way things are going. For now, what was the second part for parents?
About, yeah, anybody who's going through estrangement right now, any
Yeah, yeah,
support for them?
it's I if you can, if at all possible, at least what has worked for me is focusing on myself. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't mentally healthy. I wasn't physically healthy. I was starting to have some very serious GI issues. I was exhausted all of the time, and I knew that I just couldn't continue to do this. So it's patience, acceptance, understanding that their behaviors, there's this whole story that we really don't understand or know nothing about that's behind their behaviors that makes sense to them. So once I understood that, I was then able to empathize with him instead of being so confused and upset and not understanding. And that his excuses that I did hear were not excuses, they were real valid reasons. And so when I knew that there's probably this whole, just like with anyone else you run into at the store or whatever is in a bad mood, you don't know why. There's this whole backstory that you know nothing about. And if you could kind of tune into that and understand that, you will have more empathy, um, giving yourself a lot of grace and patience for you, surrounding yourself with people that understand and that are supportive, and just doing the best you can with what you have. For me, I wanted to really learn and learn and learn. And once I started learning, I just craved more.
Mm.
Not everyone's like that, and that's okay too, but I think just patience and having some hope, working on yourself.
Yeah. Anytime we can understand things at all, it makes them less scary and less painful. And so, even just getting enough information to just understand to the level that it can help with some of the fear and panic. And, of course, then the physical things that come out of that. Um, so, if anybody wants to get a hold of you to find about your groups or other services you offer, where do they find you?
I can be found at a new perspective, coaching.com. Um, I don't think I have time to put it in the chat, but
No, I'll
I
put it in the show notes.
okay. And then I can also be found on cmcffc.org, where I co facilitate invitation to change meetings that will begin on July 15th on a regular basis. It'll be ongoing drop in meetings. Um, yeah, but I have offer coaching services. I also offer referrals and resources, again, at my website.
All right. And I'll put both of those links in the chat, in the show notes. All right. Thank you so much, Paula.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.